Barbara, do you think that's okay? Okay. Okay, let's get going. Welcome, everyone, to the San Bernardino County Planning Commission for November 12th, 2014. Let's begin by rising and pledging our allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michael, do you have roll call noted? Yes. And we may be waiting for Commissioner Pierce, but Commissioner Culler is absent, so you might have to, have that be reflected later, Michael, okay? Each night or each month rather, we set aside time to hear from the public on matters that will not be covered, hi Frank, on the agenda. Is there any public comments? If not, public comment is closed. Next is the consent agenda, which is the acknowledgement of public hearing notice, certificate of posting, and the minutes of September 17th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Next is number 4, use permit 1103-14. The planner is Mr. Turner. Oh, I'm sorry, Byron. Did we skip your director's report? You want to just do that? Do it? Okay, great.
Sorry about that. The applicant is proposing a new Verizon wireless facility, including a 65-foot tall monopine tree pole with 12-panel antennas and associated equipment. This is located at the water towers at Sunny Slope Water District's property. We have some visuals for you up on the screen. The approximate location of the site, and if this is going to work. And it's not. Michael, could you move through there's, I think, 3 slides.
Okay.
I don't know how visible that is. You have it in your packet, but it's a 65-foot high pole. Now, these visual simulations differ slightly from the ones that are in your packet. In your packet, the representations that you got are 50 feet tall. I've been given new representations showing it the 65-foot, showing it as 65 feet tall. There are a few issues to discuss with regard to this project. One is concern about the location of the project, being that it's close to property lines, but more importantly, that it's close to an approved subdivision. And let me pull up another slide for you, and I'll show. So as you're aware, we have that 500-foot separation requirement between towers and residences, and 1,500 feet from schools. So this roughly shows its location. The 2 circles are 500 feet and 1,500 feet. That shows its location in relationship to the plot plan for Santana Ranch. So you can see that there are lots planned within that 500-foot radius. Also on the other side of Santana Ranch, the Pepper Tree Estates project is also located, has lots located within 500 feet of the site. So, as I've told the applicant and any neighbors, that we would not withhold a building permit on a project because of its relationship to an existing tower. We look at it the other way around, and in fact, on numerous occasions, we've requested the Planning Commission make findings as to why that 500-foot separation doesn't apply. In this case, it is not within 500 feet of a residence or 1,500 feet of a school, but it is within 500 feet of approved lots. So I think we need a determination from the Planning Commission, or at least kick off this discussion. We've talked numerous times about our intent to revise the communications ordinance and the reasons why that 500-foot separation was put in the first place, which, I don't believe are valid anymore. You might want to look at a, distance to, look at the height of the pole in relation to distance from property line or distance from homes as a different setback as part of a new ordinance. But with that said, our ordinance today says within 500 feet of a residence. So I kind of want to kick off that discussion, looking down the road, just so I can gauge if this commission would support in the future removal or reduction of that 500-foot prohibition. And I think now is a good time to talk about it, being that here we have an example of,
Yeah.
of a potential conflict.
Remind us, Byron, before you go, because I can't remember, what was the reason for the 500-foot rule? Is it a health and safety concern with radioactivity or something?
That's the idea. When we first started developing ordinances, and this is before my time, but when counties and cities first started developing telecommunications ordinances, there was people concerned about what the frequencies and what the radio waves were going to do. The government said that we can't use that as a criteria, that it is safe. They determined that it is safe. And so if we wanted to come up with other reasons why a separation could be required, we could, but it can't be because of radio frequency. So 500 feet was chosen. I wasn't part of the staff when that number came out as to why it was picked. But generally, you see them, 500, it's pretty extreme. Usually you see them around 100, 200, because that's the height of a tower in general. And so if it were to fall down, it wouldn't, have a safety issue.
Okay.
But that's why we have that number there. It was a way to require separation from residential uses to appease people who were concerned about radio frequencies, yet we were not able to have that as criteria when choosing to permit a site.
Right, okay.
I'm gonna run back over here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lowe, you have a question?
I was on the planning commission when the original ordinance, I
Oh, really
believe.
good.
And I remember at that time, most of the towers were not around populated areas. So the 500 feet really didn't make that much difference because there was really no housing around. And there were quite a few people that were concerned at that time, but that was a long time ago.
Okay.
Okay, another issue, moving on, another issue with this site is the access. There has been some concern over whether the applicant has legal and physical access to the site, whether that easement that is shown on the plans is there or not. After discussing with the applicant might clarify if I misspeak, but their negotiations with Sunny Slope Water District, they've chosen to table those until they have their entitlements and then come back to discuss access. Now, again, there's a question on whether, I guess part of the question is whether Sunny Slope actually has access, and that has not been part of our review up to this time, whether they have access in order to give to the applicant, or if, and I will have the applicant come up and explain a little more about where the access comes from and where they think the access is and the legal status of the property, because I just had that discussion about a half hour ago.
Okay.
A couple other items with this site. We've discussed modifying condition number 1. The county is not interested in changing our standard indemnification at this point, but we will be discussing it with the applicant in the future about tailoring it more. But right now, we have a request to change some language, and we're not in support of that change. There's a request to modify condition number 11. I have no issue with deleting that condition, because that, again, is something else that the ordinance governs it. So whatever the ordinance says at the time that it's applicable should govern, as opposed to locking it in as a condition. And then number 14 is another request for at least more discussion. That condition came from a direct request from the fire marshal. It is not something that our ordinance covers. It is something that we work into our lease agreements when we do have towers on county property, but it's not something that we typically apply to specific projects. So again, I have no objection to removing that condition with the idea that we're going to discuss it further among staff, and when we, sooner rather than later, get to amending the ordinance, we'll be addressing it in there.
So that's
So-
something you anticipate putting into the new ordinance?
At least some type of language, yeah, but further
Enable-
defined instead of the county has the ability to take over your tower in time of emergency, you know.
Okay.
I think that's all the issues. I'll let the applicant and members of the public cover others if there are any, if I forgot any. But otherwise, that concludes the staff's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. Verizon, you're up. And before you talk, Frank and Jason, are you both going to speak on this? One, okay. Because, sorry to preempt you, but obviously you're Santana Ranch, and Jason, are you interested in the Pepper Tree Estates? Both, both the same? Okay, great. Sorry, ma'am, thank you.
Rebecca Anderson, representing Verizon Wireless. Thank you, commissioners, for hearing our application tonight. And Verizon Wireless is in need of a new cell facility in this area. The need is due to a capacity issue with our existing East Hollister site. This site is located approximately 1.7 miles west of our currently proposed location. And the sector that is facing the east on this existing site has been experiencing capacity overloads, at least since the beginning of this year and prior, and it will continue to get worse as the time goes on. Therefore, this new site is needed for every transaction that goes on in between that site and where this new site is coming in to really keep the Verizon coverage and service at its optimum level. And in addition, considering that there is a bunch of development planned for this area, the increase in users will drive the need for the site even higher. We did locate this site very specifically. Obviously, there was a discussion regarding your ordinances regarding 500 feet from residential areas. In this area, there currently is water tanks and vacant land, and we do know that it is planned for residential. There are existing residences on the west side of Fairview Road, also on the south side of John Smith Road. Therefore, this location is one of the only available locations to put a tower. And as mentioned previously, there is no effect on the permitting of residences going forward that will be built after this tower is installed. We did choose again to put this tower on the property of the water tanks, as we feel that is an appropriate use, an appropriate location, as these are both industrial, infrastructure-related pieces of equipment. And therefore, we did look at some of the other properties surrounding, including the Guerre's property to the east. And we did have discussions with them about putting a tower on their property. They were interested, but negotiations didn't come to fruition, mostly monetary, and those are proprietary details, of course. So we have been working with the Sunny Slope Water District. And we are still in discussions with them, but they did want us to go ahead and move forward with our planning permits. And just a kind of a correction of what Byron had stated, it wasn't necessarily required that we get this before they continue with us, but they were encouraging us to go ahead and move forward so that we could, show we do have our planning permits. Another issue that was brought up is regarding our access. And this is a very interesting situation. We are proposing an access road from Fairview Road, or proposing an access route, access easement from Fairview Road over to our site. Actually, is there a way to change this back to like the photo simulation overview?
Just left, where was it?
The one that had the aerial.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay. Oops.
Okay.
There. And that should be.
That looks
one.
like it.
And then the front, there. So, kind of where that number 1 is, the road that's existing goes all the way across east to the water tanks. And this is a road that has been used by there's both Sunny Slope and City of Hollister tanks here. Oh, sure. It's existing road, they've been using it for decades. But it does turn out that they never did get any legal easement that they can find that's been recorded. So we've had our title companies and our surveyors working on this for months, as well as getting our attorneys involved. And it turns out neither the property to the south nor the property to the north actually owns this road. The legal descriptions of both cut off right at the bottom of the road and the top of the road. And this is actually something that we've just been working on that's kind of, we've just been figuring it out really recently. And obviously, Verizon Wireless doesn't want to move forward without getting the legal access, which we're working on. So we hope that doesn't preclude, your approval of the tower, because that is something that is being worked on. And so the last deed that has actually been found for this road is from 1875. And it's barely legible, and there's nothing else after that. So we are working on doing a litigation guarantee with our title company to go ahead and use this road. And then if any future person claims to own this road, we would work out something between them with the title company. But also, so after all of that research, we do feel very strongly about our ability to use this road. Also, the Sunny Slope Water District has been using it for decades. We do feel there's a prescriptive easement case there. So these are some items in the works, and this is, the strip of land is separately defined legally from the other parcels. Also, regarding the height of the tower, we did unfortunately make an error regarding these original photo sims showing a 50-foot, and that was because it was prior to having Verizon's RF engineer review the height. And when we were looking at adjacent properties, such as the Guerreras, to put a tower there, we had been proposing to them an overall height of 55 feet. And the one we are proposing tonight is 65 feet, and that is due simply to an elevation difference of 10 feet on the ground. And I do have a surveyor's certified statements regarding the elevation at our currently proposed site is 520, whereas elevation at a previously looked at candidate is 530, and therefore that is the difference of why there was a previous 55 versus 65. The height of the tank that's right in front of our proposed tower is around 40 feet at the same level as our tower is being proposed. So there is just a 25-foot difference, and the antennas, their center line is at 57. We allow for a little bit extra, of course, for the monopine crown, the foliage at the top, to make sure that it is a proportionate tree. And those antennas we were at the exact height so that they can reach over the tank in order to not have a shadowing effect. If they're too low, the tank would block the signal facing to the west. So that is the reason for the height need. We are proposing a monopine tree in order to blend in and look good, and rather than a traditional monopole tower, we are trying to provide a stealth tower here. There are existing landscape trees planted around the water tanks, and so we believe those provide a nice buffering and screening from where our equipment will be located. And this is the only location on these water tank properties where we could fit this tower. We did originally look to the north, and it turns out there's a gas line running right where the only other available space is. And that's where we originally started digging in to look, and then we came across the gas line. So we can't put one over that. So we had to definitely get creative and really think, where can we put this? It's, obviously a very small parcel. There's also, I don't know about changing the view again, but in our site plans, you might see the parcel is shaped so that it's large. I could direct you to a site plan page. Like my site plans, like in the exhibit, staff report.
Yeah, the other one is probably, the other one there, that's probably the best one you've got that I've put.
Did you not have the staff report?
I did not put, no, I don't have that digitally.
Okay. Well, anyway, on our site plans, there's a C1 page, and the parcel itself looks bigger, but the rest of the land of that parcel was dedicated to habitat and conservation. So that was also off limits for development. So please let me know if you have any questions, and we do hope that you approve this application tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Lowe?
No questions.
Commissioner Rodriguez? I think we might have some other questions, but let's hear from the Guerras first, and then we can see what we can figure out here.
Thank you.
I apologize, I'm not real organized tonight. Frank Guerra, Guerra Nut Shelling, and Santana Ranch. Yes, Guerra Nut Shelling owns the property adjacent to the east, and we're part of Santana Ranch, which owns the property adjacent to the west.
Hey, Frank, sorry to interrupt you. Michael, can you put that aerial back up?
Sure.
I think that gives us the best overview. So, just so we can orient ourselves here, Frank, so got Fairview on the left, and then John Smith Road that has a 2 on it. And then that road, the first left that you come to, that's the little pond, right? And that goes back to the amphitheater and whatnot? Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
we own from here, actually. About here, all the way back.
Michael, can you hit those lights again?
I believe this is the property, yeah, this is the property line. This is the vineyard and the roadway that goes to the amphitheater. And Andersons are in this area right now cutting lots. So obviously it goes all the way back to the,
Okay, so to the left of what we see on the screen, the water towers, that's Santana Ranch? That way? And then what about Pepper Tree Estates? Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
yeah. So there was the initial Pepper Tree Estates had 5 units that were approved. One of them's completely within a 500-foot radius. One of them is part of the building envelopes in there, if you're going to use 500 feet. And there's probably 20 or more lots of Santana Ranch that are on the east or the west side that are within that area as well. I'm going to be all over the place because I got notes. One of the things we discussed today was that Sunny Slope, and this is new news, I'm sure, to Sunny Slope about the property having an easement or not being owned by anybody. They were requesting or requiring Santana Ranch to put a 16-inch water main from Fairview Road up to the water tanks, not really anything to do with the project, but just because they needed a bigger line to go up there. And they're requiring it to go through the project because they said they didn't really have easement to get, they didn't have a legal easement that they were aware of. There is a pipeline in that strip there, but they didn't want to go and try to put another one. They didn't think that they would have the ability to do that. So if there's some way of doing that, maybe then their water line can go up that strip of land as well. There was talk about screening. I had brought up to Byron today about landscape screening. The screening that's there is on our property. We planted those trees. I don't think there's much of anything on the Sunny Slope property or the city's property. When they received, really?
Go ahead, that's okay, Frank.
When they received the permit to build the last tank, they had a landscape plan that went with it. They didn't do any of the landscaping.
Who is that, did you say?
Sunny Slope.
So Sunny Slope had a landscape plan that they didn't follow through with?
Well, at the time, they said that it was probably near to 9/11, and they said that they were worried about, at least there was a move afoot about terrorism and not wanting to screen off the public, that type of thing. Terrorists might go and,
Yeah, okay.
I think that was what they said at the time. Plus, they don't think they didn't have electricity to put valves to turn the sprinkler system off and on, that type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we're concerned about the setback. I mean, it's only about 20 feet, as near as we can tell, from the property line, and it's 65 feet high at that point. The tower's 65 feet, 20 feet from our property line. I'm glad the government's determined that it's safe, and everybody believes the government, so we shouldn't be, but there's a perception, I think, in the public at least, that there might be something to be concerned about, the strength of microwaves coming off of those towers. Is it going to affect the value of the houses that we want to build there? Or is it going to, somehow, some people might not want to live in that area, and I'm not sure. That's of concern.
Falls would be really clear.
Yeah, would you, in order to get better cell service at your house, would you like a tower in your backyard?
Right, that's the issue.
I'm glad that they're not going to stop us from building houses there, but that's not the point. The point is, we want to build houses, we have a plan to build houses there. Is it right that there's a tower there as well?
Right.
There's a co-location. There's something in here about co-location where they can probably add more things onto the tower, from the top down, and there might be more antennas on it as it comes down. Maybe it doesn't need to be that high if there wasn't going to be opportunity for there to be more things put on that tower, So, anyway, we feel like it's going to affect the value and the 500-foot, whether that's something that's going to stay in place or not. It is in place today. And so I think that's most of what I got. Yeah, and it's talked about residences. Well, there's no residences there. True. There is residential. It's a residential area, and that's really what's in the rule that it talks about the 500-foot setback. And that's the development the development on both sides that we're talking about. So anyway, we would hope that.
Let me just comment on that, though. The rub that Byron was referring to that we've kind of struggled with is the issue of putting a cell tower right next to a house. House already exists. Should we allow a cell tower to go right next to it? No. But what if the cell tower already exists and someone wants to build a house next to it? Then we say, well, go ahead if that's what
Right.
you want to do.
No, I would agree. It's your
And
choice
so
at that
The
point.
unique thing about your situation is that there's no houses, there's lots. There's going to be houses, but they're not houses yet. So that's, I think, a little bit of the ambiguity that he was pointing out. Am I right about that? So it's an interesting issue, and you made some really good points. Commissioner Lowe?
Mr. Guerra, you're saying that it's 20 feet from the property line?
We just did it.
The ballpark,
yeah.
yeah. But my question is, how far or how many feet do you think the actual building of the houses will be?
It's probably 200 to 300 feet.
200 to 300 feet, okay.
But I mean, I guess the point is, what can be built, how close to someone's property line in the zoning that's out there. There's going to be a building another building that's built that supports the tower. That's built really close to the property line, 15 to 20, I guess 15 feet to 20 feet.
Well, I think what I'm hearing from you is your concern is more, would somebody want to buy a house that's that close? Is that the true concern?
Yeah, I'm one of them. I mean.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying.
Right, yeah. And I understand your point is that, if I have a piece of property, and it's probably that way, I don't know how the Ridgemark towers are, but if I say, hey, I want a tower in my backyard, that's great, I should be allowed to have that, I guess. But if we went into this, designing these lots and not expecting there to be a cell tower there,
All right.
and so now it's something different. Even though there's not a house there, there's a house that's going to be there. And
Yeah.
we're not, especially the ones on the on the Pepper Tree side, they're not going to be tract homes. They're supposed to be, we have visions of, higher-end homes in that area.
Yeah, it's a nice, beautiful development.
So-
We actually had that one time. Remember, someone wanted they did a cell tower in their backyard right next to the house. Way to make a little extra money, I guess. Okay.
All right, thank you.
So Frank, last question. So you would say, therefore, Planning Commission, please deny this application completely, or can you think of a different location within the Sunny Slope water tank area? What's your request?
Well, she said there wasn't anything that was farther away from the fence line, lower. Yeah, it's actually going to be screened probably pretty well from the houses that are closest to it, because the tank is so large and so close to the houses. But we're on the other side where there's no screening except for what we've provided, because we're tired of looking at the tank. We're trying to, build, we planted those redwood trees along that fence line there just to try to screen the tank out for future houses. And of course, we can't screen out a 65-foot tower. And so, yeah, we'd like to, we'd like to not be there at all, obviously. And I don't know if there's anything that could be done short of that as far as landscaping on the property, not on our property to screen it. It shouldn't be our job to screen it. And lowering it, moving it somewhere farther away from the property line, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm sorry, Miss Verizon, I keep calling you, what's your name? That's Rebecca. As Rebecca pointed out, it's proprietary, so we're not interested in money or anything, but when you were in negotiations with Verizon to put the tower on your property, where would you have put it that would have been less intrusive? You talk spots?
Yeah. Like she mentioned, we talked about north of the tanks. So,
Wouldn't those same kinds of issues have existed if you had been able to strike a deal on money? Had you put it?
well, again, it's proprietary why this didn't happen.
Okay, well, I
money.
said don't, you don't have to talk about
But
money.
yeah, obviously, those were things that we were considering and probably affected a lot more of Santana Ranch in the area that was discussed at the time. And that was always a concern. It was like, what is that going to do to our neighbors, to the people coming from in the future that are going to be living right in those, or wanting to sell houses right in that area there, so.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was, hey, there's money, obviously, and it was good money, so it wasn't only, if there was a money issue, it certainly wasn't the major factor that stopped it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Frank, very much. Jason, did you have anything you wanted to add? No? Okay. Anyone else? If not, public comment is closed. Any further questions for Verizon or the director?
No, I don't
I don't
have.
have any questions.
Okay. Any comments or anything, or is there a motion? There's only 3 of us, so we can't spread it around.
So we can't
as
spread it around, huh?
Can't spread it around as easily as we have before.
No, I'll make the motion, we approve the south side. Where's all that information on
It's on
page 1?
recommendations on page 1,
Okay,
at the bottom.
approve a use permit number 1103, is that the correct location?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 1103-14.
Yes, 14 with the following findings and conditions of approval.
And also that it's exempt from CEQA with the deletion of conditions number, if it's what the planning commission wants, condition
Secret
of.
pursuant to section 15303?
Yes. And did you want to add the deletion of 11 and 14?
Yes. Mhm.
Mr. Chair, if I second this, I want to make a couple comments under the question. Is that all right?
Under what?
Under the question.
Yeah. So you want
Okay.
to table the motion for a second and before you second, or do you want to,
I can go ahead and second it and then
okay, go ahead.
make the comments under the
Okay,
question. All right.
sure.
Is there a way, or I have a question, is there a way that we can add some kind of a condition that the property owner has to do some landscaping to minimize?
Sure. I would think we can,
Yes, the commission can add landscaping requirements on the applicant to sufficiently screen well, I don't know what, I don't want to say sufficiently screened, but you can add a condition that requires landscaping for purposes of screening.
All right, I'd like to see, and I think that we should maybe revisit the landscaping plan that was supposed to go in that never did. They should at least look, somebody should look at that.
Yeah, so let's just procedurally here, what, do you mind withdrawing your motion for a minute and we can clean this up a little bit?
Okay, for a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So now that the motion is withdrawn, I have that brought up a question. What ability do we have, if any? Because when Frank was mentioning that, I thought, well, Sunny Slope shouldn't get out of having to do the landscaping that was required of them because of terrorism or something. Would that be, does Sunny Slope need to come in with some kind of certificate of compliance from time to time, or will they have another application that comes up? Can we tag them then? How can we enforce that?
They aren't required to go through the county for their approvals. So there's no permit, there's no county permits on the towers. It would have never been a county-approved landscape plan or county required. It sounds like they were showing that they were going to do landscaping and never did, but it wouldn't have been something that was required by the county.
Is that because they're a public utility? So, okay. How about if they want to do this water line along that road? Would that involve any kind of county approval, or are they once again exempt?
Well, sometimes you work with Public Works with regard to encroachment, but generally, we will do inspections for them on a courtesy from a planning, from a building point of view, their buildings, but they don't get permits. They don't need to.
Yeah, they don't need to. Wish there was some opportunity to get them to screen that better, because there's going to be all these pretty houses out there and these big tanks that aren't screened visually at all. But it's not fair to Verizon to make them screen all the water tanks, screen all their stuff.
Right, well, that's why I asked if we could put it on the property owner.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying the property owner being Sunny Slope?
Right.
Like if you want to have this Verizon tenant, here's what you got to do. You got to screen your whole property.
Right.
Oh.
Is that possible?
You see what Commissioner Lowe's asking?
Well, there could be a condition that there be screening, but then Verizon would have to work with the owner to work that out. Because they can't, maybe, the property owner's not here.
Well, actually, that would be between Verizon and the property owner,
Yes.
and they're still in negotiations, I'm assuming, so.
Sure. Do you see what we're getting at? We're trying to find a way to get these tanks better screened from a landscaping perspective.
Yeah, so I have two thoughts, questions, ideas. One is, on the inside of the tank properties, there really is not that much room for big types of landscaping because they need an access road around the equipment. There are the existing trees, I guess, that the growers planted on the outside. And if there's a way that we could work with them or help them with that side of the landscaping, number one. Number two, I did think of the idea of maybe like a vines on the existing chain link fence. But I would like to also request that the condition be limited to the location where Verizon's equipment is going, because that's just a small part of the whole parcel. And I would agree that, if there's landscaping that's being requested to cover Verizon's facility, then I could definitely see how we would, work with Sunny Slope on getting that up and going. Especially like a vine, I could see would be a good type of landscaping. Those are my thoughts and concerns and questions. Also, it's unclear on the Sunny Slope side. Well, irrigation is always an issue we'd have to figure out. So since there are existing plants out there, I would think if we could maybe just put a few more amongst the other existing ones, that might be solving the problem.
So the equipment shed, I'm looking at your sheet, A4. have that? Your sheet A4. So it looks like your equipment sheds, buildings, apparatus, there's not a height dimension there, but what would you say that is, 10, 12 feet?
Yes, I've known it to be 10 feet,
Okay.
shelters.
So let's say it's 10 feet tall, and the chain link fence is what, 6 or 7?
It's 6, I
So,
believe.
so vines on the chain link fence, I don't think are going to do it. And if, so I agree with the commissioners that we would like to see landscaping around, certainly around the perimeter of the Verizon facility, besides just vines on the chain link, so. Because I think it is going to be sensitive visually to a lot of these beautiful homes that are going to be built in the area. So, is that the consensus of the, whose
Yes,
idea,
that's-
was that your idea?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. As far as, Commissioner Lowe, as far as somehow getting them to landscape all the way around those tanks, I don't know if we just get there.
That's
I don't
why
think we
thought
can
if
get
the-
there from here.
We could make the property owner do it, but if we can't, then.
Yeah.
I mean, there are existing trees there. I have a photo on my phone I could show you if you would like
So,
to see it.
Commissioner Lowe, would you be comfortable with adding a condition to the conditions of approval that something along the lines of Verizon to landscape the perimeter of the cell tower facility site by submitting a landscaping plan to be approved by staff?
That would be fine.
Is that okay with you, Byron? If they do a landscaping plan and you approve, and staff approves it?
Yeah, we can, I'm comfortable with that condition.
Okay, and you probably heard the comments. I think what the objective of the commission is that it not just be vines on a 6-foot chain link fence, but if the equipment shed's gonna be 10 feet tall, neighbors to this thing aren't gonna wanna look at an equipment shed, so something that would grow at least to that height and not interfere with any of the transmissions, which is way up top, but some kind of shrubbery or trees or bushes or something.
Yeah, the plans here show it's an 11 and a half feet tall equipment shed, so.
The equipment shed, okay. So some vegetation that grows at least 11 and a half feet tall to cover that. Is that okay? So you do a landscaping plan for the perimeter of the Verizon site, submit it to staff, they'll approve it, and off you go.
Sufficient to cover the height of the equipment shelter?
Correct.
Trees, shrubs.
Yep.
I think we'll try to figure something out.
Good. I got faith in Verizon. I love Verizon.
Under the call of the question, I also was wondering whether one more sentence should be added to condition of approval number 9 that we've used in one other wireless facility. At the end of that, to say all co-located facilities shall also have a stealth appearance, and I wanted to see whether that would be acceptable with you. Okay.
Okay, just to make that clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's if they add like an additional something onto the tower at some point in the future.
Okay, Commissioner Rodriguez, you want to take a stab at restating your
Say
motion?
it again.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need your help, Barbara.
Okay.
Okay, I say we approve condition. Permit under CEQA, section 15303, and approve use permit number 1103-14 with the following findings and conditions. And that was number 11,
With the deletion of number 11
deletion number 11,
and number 14,
and number 14,
the added language to number 9,
and added language number 9,
and
and that
the addition of condition of approval number 16,
16 for the landscaping.
as stated by Commissioner DeVries on the record, unless you wanted to rephrase that again.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, and specifically, a new condition would be next in order after 15 or whatever the number would be, that Verizon to provide perimeter landscaping of sufficient height to visually screen the all equipment sheds and equipment used and to note those proposed landscaping plans to staff for staff approval prior to issuance of a building permit. Okay,
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Frank and Jason, for coming out. I appreciate it.
This decision of the Planning Commission may be appealed within 10 days of the Board of Supervisors. So that's, as with all projects, the appeal must be in writing to the clerk of the board here at the administration office.
Okay, agenda item 5. This is use permit 1104-14, and the planner is Mr. Turner again.
Thank you. This project, the applicant is requesting approval to install a 4-foot diameter microwave antenna on an existing 55-foot tall monopine tree pole. This will extend the height of the monopine to 58 feet and will require new and replacement branches to maintain its stealthing integrity. All new equipment will be painted to match the existing tower. The existing tower was permitted under use permit 920-05. You have visual representations in your packet showing the site near Ridgemark, where the other water towers are and the other trees or towers are. Staff has reviewed the proposal and has no objection to the proposed request on the project site. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission make the required findings and the CEQA findings, and then recommend that the Planning Commission approve use permit 1104-14 with the findings and conditions of approval in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Any questions for the director? Okay, is there anyone from the public that would like to address this agenda item? No? If there's
have a
not,
secret
then
finding.
public comment is closed. So I had a question, Byron. What's the difference, you do these things and you kind of learn as you go, right, over the years. What's the difference between one of these microwave dishes and the other kinds? What does a microwave dish do?
I'd request that the applicant respond to that question.
Because you don't know either.
Not as much as they do.
Who is the applicant here? Oh, would you like to say anything, sir? Did you hear the question? Yes, sir. Okay. Just out of curiosity, because you don't see those big round things very often.
The addition of a microwave antenna in this particular case is so that an Ethernet. Boy, all right. I'm not the technician, okay? But you asked for the difference. Well, the difference is that when you have the panel antennas that we just got finished discussing with the Verizon project, their proposed panel antennas, as is the case with the panel antennas at the AT&T site, they transmit a signal out into the horizon, out into the air, on a 360-degree basis. And that signal goes out, and it's captured on the receivers that we have on our phones, right? And then we make our call, and then it transmits back to the panel antenna. Well, that signal goes into the antenna, down into the radio equipment, and then it goes into the land-based telephone system, okay? And then it goes off to the next central office and so on. A microwave transmission is an extremely focused, line-of-sight, penetrating signal from one location to another, and in that signal, it's used for transmitting data. This particular site, my site, as is the case with the other site, are water tank sites, and there's not sufficient land-based telco service. They're just simple copper wires like you'd have to a residence. I shouldn't say that because homes now have cable and so forth. But the microwaves are used to provide the bandwidth to the sites so that the sites increase their ability to handle multiple calls and internet browsing needs that people are making from around the cell site. You asked the difference. A microwave is a focused, penetrating signal carrying data from one spot to another only, and the panel antennas are transmitting the signal out into on a 360-degree basis.
Interesting. So the panels are more for talking, and then the microwave dishes are more for when you use your phone for data, like browsing the internet and stuff?
No, the panel antennas also handle the transmission of data as well. But see, for sites that don't have, the microwave antennas are being used to transmit a fiber or Ethernet equivalent signal from one site that has that type of capacity to another site that does not. The case as the case in point with my project is that this proposed microwave antenna is transmitting Ethernet capabilities, fiber capabilities, bandwidth to another site called Hollister, another site in Hollister that is away from a land-based ability to get fiber to it or cable. And so that's what that, and the reason why these cell sites are requiring a great deal of bandwidth is because everybody's using their smartphone for internet browsing as opposed to a simple text or phone call. And so it requires a great deal of bandwidth. And that's why you've heard the term LTE, 4G. You hear it from Verizon, you hear it from AT&T, and those are new technologies that are being used to increase bandwidth capabilities, speed capabilities for people to browse the internet. And LTE 4G is only capable of working to the extent that it's supposed to work is if it has high bandwidth supporting those services.
Fascinating. So where's this one pointing at?
Well, it's pointing to a site known as Hollister, and it's a new site. And I don't even know if I have an address.
It's okay, I was just curious. I'd done
But it's,
fascinating stuff.
so since this project has been apparently non-contentious, it's gone from one department to another. It's been publicly noticed, and I don't believe there's been one item of opposition. And so with that, and the fact that we're going to continue the theme of camouflaging the microwave antenna by we're going to be doing a little bit of rebranching on our monopine right now, and we're going to extend the branches at the top to help cover the proposed new microwave antennas. And with that, I would respectfully ask your approval of the use permit and the categorical exemption
Yeah, well,
to CEQA.
and I was just going to mention that, make sure that you hide that big round thing as much as possible within the branches or whatever else, because we are paying real close attention to the aesthetics of these deals, as you've been able to hear.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, any new metal or material going on to that monopine is going to be painted green to match the needles, and then we are going to be adding some new branches to the tree around, up, and on top of the tree.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. Good deal. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
If there's no more questions or comments, is there a motion?
I'll move the approval of use permit 1004-14 with the findings and condition and the category exemption of CEQA.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for the explanation.
Well,
Like Bill Nye, the science guy.
I have to believe I was close.
Close enough for us. More than we knew.
Never know the difference.
That's right. We wouldn't know if you're wrong. Good luck with your project. Okay, agenda item 6. Is this the general plan matter, Byron?
Yeah, I wanted to give you an update on
Okay.
where we're at with the general plan. The schedule has slipped slightly by about 2 to 3 months. It's primarily to do with traffic. Right now, the EMC planning group is revising the traffic. And Hatchmont McDonald is looking at the doing the peer analysis of the traffic study and the traffic analysis using the AMBAG models and the San Benito County model to Once the traffic is final, then that will be able, that will allow them to finish the air quality sections and the climate change sections of the EIR. So that's what's being done right now. The bulk of the EIR is actually, we have it in our office, and we're reviewing it to make sure that there aren't any mitigation measures that, part of the issue with the last EIR was there were mitigation measures that drove policy, that changed policy in the general plan. We want to avoid that this time, that the general plan needs to be should be self-mitigating, and that there shouldn't be mitigation measures in the environmental document that contradict the general plan. So that's a little snapshot of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the EIR. So right now, we're looking at having that document out for public circulation in December. It was planned to be out, in September. So December, January being the public review period of the EIR. We will have a public meeting on the EIR, and then we'll be back to the Planning Commission hopefully January, to really start looking at the EIR and looking at the general plan itself and giving a recommendation to the board.
Excellent. Any questions for Byron, Commissioner Lowe?
It always bothers me when we start talking about we're going to be certifying like the final EIR in the month of December. Because I always feel that the general public feels we're trying to slide something through.
Yeah.
Because in the month of December, it's the month that most people don't get involved in.
We will keep that in mind to make sure that we're not releasing it between, the comment period between Christmas and New Year's, that, we'll keep the public in mind and make sure that it's properly noticed and keep while the board is pushing for it to be done as soon as possible, we'll keep that issue in mind also to let the board know that you want to make sure that everybody has a chance to review the document. I'm sure they do too.
Right, I think that, if it takes us an extra 2 weeks in the beginning of the process, it's much better than getting into it and having people say you kind of rammed this through and we didn't get a chance, and we're going to hear that anyway, no matter what, no matter how long we spread it out. But I think in the month of December, you have to be somewhat concerned about. And then the other thing, I've been looking a little bit at the map, and now, are we actually checking, or will we check at some time, like with Sunny Slope Water and with the City of Hollis? I mean, is there water available in some of these areas that we're saying multiple units? How in depth do we check?
Well, with regard to, if we're talking about the new community study areas, we're not going that far in depth. That will still require an applicant to, and with all developments, that will require an applicant to do the research and the testing to prove that they have water, and that'll be part of any development, is proving that you have water. So we're not doing that work for them.
Okay. The other part of it is the sanitary sewer, because we do have the agreement through the governance committee about, no more batch plants and, trying to hook up, especially with major projects, to either Sunny Slope or to the City of Hollister. And has that been taken into consideration, or will it be?
Again, if we're looking at the new community study areas, there may not be an ability to connect to an existing system for a major project in those areas if we were to get an application for one. So that would be a discussion that we would need to continue to have.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent questions. Commissioner Rodriguez, anything?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, well, thank you for the update, Byron. I guess we'll get our first look at this in January then, right?
Well, the general plan, the one that the commission and the board said, this is the one we're going with to move forward, this is the one we're doing the EIR on. That is online and available to review. So, if you want to get started on your homework, it's up there.
Get started early?
Yeah.
Okay. But the time that we'll look at it formally as a commission will be January?
Yes.
Best guess. Okay. All right, excellent. Anything else? Any planning commissioner comments?
What about the joint meeting with the City of Hollister? Has any more been done on that?
We haven't been able to schedule anything yet.
It's not for a lack of willingness on our part. I also invited the city of San Juan Bautista to have a similar meeting with us, but they politely declined, so,
Really?
yeah. I know, that's what I
Well,
said.
it's not a commission willingness, it's a staff ability to find time to sit down together as two staffs to figure out how we're going to do it. So,
Between you and Hollister?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. And, you know, the point being that we look forward to having a dialogue
The
with
city's
those
willing
guys.
to. In fact, they were the ones that initiated the
Yeah.
request.
More communication, the better, so. Okay, anything else?
Move for adjournment?
Second. Motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.